Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is Project 2029, Where Are You? And I was writing about, yet again, sort of the barrage of things that are coming at us. And that's how it is every day, every week in the United States. And there's just a high level of gaslighting that happens. And for people like me who grew up with a lot of that, it is for a while, it can be triggering, right? So if you grew up in a household or a couple of households in my case, where you were seeing things that were by anyone's standards scary or confusing or, and then you would go to the trusted grown-ups around you and say, hey, I don't understand what's happening, or this doesn't seem right, or this thing happened. And then you're being told that's not what happened, or your feelings are not correct, and it's the opposite of what you think. When you grow up that way, it is, of course, crazy making. When you come out of an environment like that, you really have to figure out how to trust your own perception. And that itself is like a process. And for me, that was certainly a process that I started when I began practicing yoga. That's when I started learning how to trust myself. And I had to start at a really basic level. It would be things like, okay, I'm in Warrior 2, for example, and, I'm supposed to be in a 90-degree bend in my front leg as long as that is comfortable for me and my knee and all of that. I feel like I'm in a 90-degree bend. Let me look down and see if I'm actually in a 90-degree bend. Like that's how kind of foundational I had to get. I would put my hands on my body, I would look visually. So sometimes that's where you're just beginning from the ground up. When you have done a lot of that kind of work, and that's a big part of the yoga practice too, for those of you who don't practice, or sometimes people practice a long time but they don't really study the philosophy underneath, like vidya, clear seeing, is a big part of it. Viveka, being able to discernment, being able to figure out what is real versus what is not real, or what is permanent and lasting versus what is fleeting. That's a big part of the practice. And so the idea and sort of an ideal state of being is that you are facing reality as it is, which sounds great, but we all have our frames of reference. And so every time we're walking into a situation, we're bringing so much with us. And even knowing that is helpful, right? So if, for example, you have things you tell yourself like, oh, I hate going to parties. I find it really stressful, or I never know what to say to people, or I'm not good in social situations. You're walking in with all of that stuff going on, right? You have all that sort of that noise happening in your head that's going to affect the way you're carrying yourself. It's going to affect how available you are to the present moment and to, meeting somebody and being open and being curious to, how they're showing up and who they are and what they have to say, because you have this whole other soundtrack going on that is going to be pulling a lot of your energy and attention. And so these are it takes time. It takes time and it takes work to understand that we are, all of us, always bringing a lot into everything that we're looking at, and learning how to kind of wipe the lenses clean so we can just see clearly and show up and be present, and not be bringing a whole bunch of stuff with us that's going to fog things up and make it hard to see. And that can be like in every area, that can be like socially for sure, but also professionally, creatively, like, imposter syndrome, or just the constant comparing and contrasting. Um, so that. So when you have a long history of sort of having feelings and not feeling confident that your perception is something you can trust, it's really painful when you then find yourself in an environment constantly where, you're seeing things and you're like, well, this is not good. This is not okay. And, you're being told it's fine, relax, everything's fine. It's you, it's your perception. That's how we are. That's how we're living here in the United States now. So, just for example, this past week, like so many things, like every week happen. We have a $400 million plane that is being offered to the president of the United States. So like normally this is just like, we wouldn't even be talking about this, because this is not, we don't do this. It's like, it's in the Constitution. But aside from that, because, they're showing us every day they don't care about the Constitution. You don't want to have the president accepting gifts from foreign countries, because there's, no such thing as a free gift. It's like, what are they going to want in return? You're making yourself beholden to another country. So we don't do that. We've never done that. It's just not something that we do. And anytime it's come up, there's always like a huge, wait a second, that's not okay. And listen, these clauses get tested and whatever. But now you have the most egregious example of a $400 million plane. And you have people being like, wait a second, that's not okay. What, are we serious right now? And the comments are like, the plane he's on is old and it was made by Boeing, and, just relax, who cares? And you're like, ugh. Really? Because I recall when we were like freaking out over a tan suit, or, Michelle Obama showing her ripped arms, Kamala Harris's laugh. Like, there's been a lot of conversation about a lot of things that, yeah. So anyway, it's just, it gets old. And there is a lot of hypocrisy, because very well, for example, if Obama had ever for 1 second thought about accepting a $400 million plane, it would be, forget about it. Biden, forget it. Like the hypocrisy is so thick, you could cut it with a knife. And this is where we are. And this is just a constant state, and it just is what it is. But I've gotten to the point where I'm like, oh, I can't even, it's not triggering, because it's just in the wall. It's just a constant. It's just it's not even upsetting. It's like almost laughable, but it's sad, because I'm watching the country, I'm just watching all these ideals that I really thought more of us believed in. I'm just watching them be eroded every day. And so it's painful and it's sad, but it's not triggering at this point. It's just another day. That's kind of how it is now. And a lot of things happened that are really concerning for so many different reasons. AI is like a big thing that, we should all be educating ourselves about all the different things that are going on right now. I know there are a lot of people, they love AI. It makes life so easy, and ChatGPT, and people using ChatGPT as a therapist. And I mean, people like writing, I'm having trouble writing a text to my mother-in-law. Let me use ChatGPT. So couple of things. AI is really, really hard on the environment. You look up what it's doing for energy, water, all of it, in case you don't know that. And I, this technology is exploding at such a quick rate. For example, LibGen, you can look this up. I link this stuff in the essays. So this is all linked if you want to go and take a look for yourself. But the Atlantic Monthly did a large sort of piece about this not long ago. And there's a website. And my book, one of my books, Yoga's Healing Power, Looking Inward for Change, Growth, and Peace, it was used for AI. It was just taken. And that's what they're doing. They're just taking, and everyone's books are on there. I'm not unique. Every author, every screenplay, they have just taken everyone's published works and used that material to train their AI models. And that's, huge copyright infringement. I'm not seeing a penny for any of that, and neither is anyone else. So that's just one example of some of the things that are happening. If you remember, and I'm quite sure you do, the Luigi Mangione case and Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, the big thing that came to light after that is that Brian Thompson had been using AI technology to deny claims. So there's decision-making tech, AI decision-making tech. And basically what happens is, instead of having a human being look at the claims that are coming in, people who are really desperately ill, their child has cancer, their mother has diabetes, somebody needs a life-saving surgery, and they're sending in a claim, and they're being denied by an AI. No. In that case, when they started looking at what had happened there, 90% of the time, if the people appealed, the claims went through. So this AI decision-making technology was denying claims that would go through 90% of the time if a human being looked. That is, I don't know what to say about what a moral and ethical failure that is. And people die, like time goes by when that kind of thing is happening, when a claim is denied. The stress you're under when you have a family member who is sick and you're trying to figure out what to do and, the fastest way to get them scheduled for surgery or the help that they need, and you are being denied by a machine. And now you have to, and we've all been there, get on the phone, wait on hold for 4 hours, yell into your telephone, representative. It's like, this is where we're heading, and we're already there. And people die. And, so what happened last week, Carla Hayden, who's was the Librarian of Congress, the Library of Congress has the head librarian. She was appointed in 2020, and Shira Perlmutter was the director of U.S. copyright, and she was appointed by Carla Hayden. And so they both got fired. And Carla Hayden is Black. She was fired. And Carolyn Leavitt, got up there in front of the mics and said she was fired because she was putting out questionable and inappropriate books for kids that focus too much on DEI in the library. Okay, so the Library of Congress is not a lending library. You don't go to the library with your kid and take out a book about Rosa Parks. It's not that kind of library. It's a research library. You have to be 16 to even use the library resources. It is not a lending library. So that Shira Perlmutter put out a report stating that in many cases, this AI technology and companies that are using AI are infringing on copyright, our copyright laws. And anyone could have told you that. I could have told you that. Just like I said, I knew this, months and months and months ago. And so did everyone else who writes on the internet in any way, or writes publicly, or has a book published, or a screenplay, or anything else. Just you have no protection. You have nothing is protecting you. What was snuck into the budget bill that they're working on this week, which, by the way, they're trying to gut Medicaid, which, you were told a million times that wasn't going to happen. That wasn't going to happen. It's happening. I mean, there's so many things we've been told over and over again, and, they're happening. It has nothing to do with Project 2025. This is it. We're watching it every day. This is it. So you're like, you get to a point where you're like, oh yeah, I'm not confused. I'm awake. I'm looking at the policies. I read the 900-page document and I'm watching it. You came in with your plan and you're doing your plan. Like, it's not confusing. I can see. So they both got fired, and, part of what is happening here that I think is a little bit outside of the mainstream conversation is this AI focus that this administration has, and all the people behind it. So in the budget bill, they snuck in a provision that there could be no new laws to regulate, restrict in any way AI production or development in any state for the next 10 years. Okay? That's in the budget bill. It's just kind of snuck in there. Now, that's what happens with these bills is they try to sneak things in at the last minute. But I want you to just think for a second about how intense that is. 10 years, and they're trying to sneak in this thing that says no more, there's no more regulation of anything to do with AI in any state. That's what they're trying to push through. We're dealing with a lot of really scary things here. There are people who are, if you have any kind of, if your voice is on the internet in any way, anywhere, let's say you go live on Instagram, or you go live anywhere and your voice is out there, people are now getting phone calls and it sounds like their kid speaking to them, and it sounds like their kid's in trouble. They're being scammed. It's like, hey mom, I need help. Can you Venmo me right away, but Venmo me here. It's like, there's a lot of really scary stuff that's going on aside from deep fakes and all those things that are happening, where you're seeing celebrities are suddenly making these commercials and you're like, this is weird. Why is this person, that sounds like their voice, but this doesn't sound like a product they would be getting behind. I mean, we're going to get into some really, really scary, strange territory if this becomes like an unregulated field. It's already scary. It's already bad. So the fact that that's what these people want to do is, everyone should be paying attention to that. But no one is, because there's a gold shiny plane, that everyone is talking about. I mean, and how can you not talk about that? Because that's also terrifying. And there's just so much coming at us all the time. People being disappeared off the street with no due process, and the list goes on. No one can kind of keep up with all the different things that are happening, but we need to be paying attention, because there are some things that are really scary for all of us, no matter what side of the aisle you're on here. I cannot imagine anyone who's like, yeah, I don't care, go for it. But sometimes you think that, and I saw the the head of cybersecurity for the FBI, his name is, I want to say it's Brian Varndren, but I might be getting that wrong. There was a 60 Minutes interview with him, and he was saying every American's social security number's on the dark web for $2 a piece now. It's just out there because of all of the stuff that happened with like Musk, Doge, big balls, like that. Just all of our stuff's just like readily available now. And I was like, what? And somebody in like the comments underneath was like, our stuff has been available for 20 years on the internet. You all need to like stop whining and get a clue, and it's like that kind of thing. You're like, okay, so dude on the internet with 42 followers or head of cybersecurity at the FBI. Who am I going to listen to here? And by the way, the guy who's head of cybersecurity at the FBI was saying it has never been like this, ever. It's not to say we haven't had our breaches and things that have happened, but it has never been a situation where you could just readily access every American social security number on the dark web, ever. So, I was supposed to fly into Newark on Monday, and I booked my flights, and I then got an email from the airline saying, hey, we would really like you to either fly 4 days early or late on the front end and back end of your trip. And also, like, there's a really good chance that your flights are going to be severely delayed or canceled, and it would be better for you to fly into a different airport. And if you want to go ahead and change your flights, we will not charge a change fee, or we'll refund your credit card if you would prefer. So I'm like, okay, what? And because there are not enough air traffic controllers and the equipment is failing at Newark. So it's like, I've never in all my years of traveling, and I've been in Los Angeles since 2001, I have flown back and forth to New York so many times. This is unheard of. This has never happened before. So there's just things that are happening, and they're very clear, and you try to have conversations, and people, tell you it's not that, or calm down, or, who cares if he takes a plane? Like, you're like, okay. So those are not productive conversations, but there are really, really scary things going on. And, I do think calling your senators, and I know that you might feel like, why am I doing it? Just call, because at least voice your absolute, not just concern and dismay about Medicaid and SNAP benefits. I mean, there are people who rely on Medicaid and SNAP in order to survive. And without that, they're not going to be okay. So for sure, this would be a very good time to be calling your senators, and definitely mention this clause about not regulating AI, because that's scary for everyone. Even the people that might think they don't care, I speak up for them too, because they just are not understanding the implications. It's the only thing I can think. And that is what I started to feel this week, is like, what is happening? Like, is there something else going on here that we are just, we just don't understand? Because you really do have, like, in Saudi Arabia this week, you've got like the CEO of Cisco is there. Musk is there. Saudi Arabia is very interested in AI, by the way. You're watching all these billionaires, like, Jeffrey Bezos and Zuck and all of them, right, falling in line. And you've got this like fixation with Mars And Musk now, because nobody's regulating anymore, now that's all happening, that we don't have independent regulatory commissions anymore. It's just like all coming under the executive branch now. Things are just being like signed through. And so he's going to have 25 rocket launches approved this year instead of 5. And that's all that stuff going into the atmosphere, all that pollution. So these guys are like fixated on Mars and AI. And we're worrying about, like what's happening to people here on Earth and the environment and our oceans and our wildlife, but also like our people, our girls, our women, our LGBTQ community, right? Like our Black, brown, indigenous community. Like we're worrying about human beings here. And they're like, I don't know, they're somewhere else. They're up on Mars. That's what they're thinking about, colonizing Mars and building gold homes with AI robots. Like I do not, and now we're like disappearing brown people from this country and inviting in white South African quote unquote refugees. They're just being like red carpeted in, and people who were here legally, because that's always the big thing that everyone says, who doesn't feel the way I do about things, like people need to come here the right way. Well, okay, well then how about all these people that came here the right way, seeking asylum and doing things, showing up for all the appointments and going through all the hoops and doing everything. And they go to their appointment and there's a woman that brought her and they took the boys away. She took her 3 sons to their scheduled immigration appointment, as she has been doing for years. She had her 8-year-old with her, and I think it was her like 17 and 18-year-old, I don't know, like her 2 older boys went into the other room and they're gone. So I shouldn't even get to say anything to them. I mean, I could start crying right now, easily. It's like, this is where we are. These are the things that are happening here. So I started to just get this really weird feeling of, these guys they're not focused on the stuff that we're focused on. We're like really worrying about people and whether they're going to be okay, and the Constitution and what's happening here in this country. And I mean, the Voting Rights Act got bashed yesterday. Like we're worrying about all these things, and they're just focused on the next thing they can try to colonize and conquer, and rocket launches and AI, and I feel like we are just kind of like NPCs for people who are gamers, right? We're just like ants. We're cogs in the wheel. Like they don't care if our planes fall out of the sky. They don't care if we die. They're gutting medical research because they do not care. This guy, he wants more babies. Well, what kind of babies? I mean, I just, it's like this whole thing about we're losing the white majority. White people are not going to have the majority as of like 2035 if things keep going on this trajectory. And, this conversation that is happening is terrifying. And there is no other lens to how do you explain making it impossible for people to come here from other countries except people who are white. Those people are walking right in easily. How else is there to interpret that? We all have eyeballs, we can see. So there's all of that, right? But what I started to really think about is these people had a 920 page plan called Project 2025. And I read it. I've said this a number of times. I read it on my way to and from Portugal. And I read it because I didn't want to just like see 2 pages here or there that somebody was posting. I wanted to really try to understand what this thing was. And when I did read it, and a lot of it is, it was not, it's boring. Like a lot of it's just like you're reading, it's dry. But then there would be things in there and you're like, oh God, this is terrifying. But they came in with a plan. No matter how much they disavowed it or tried to distance him from it or whatever, they came in with a plan that they had been selling for years. Like they got their party, they got their base really enthused and on board, and they went in and they did it, and they didn't hide it. I mean, even if they tried to say it's not where he's not that's not what's happening. He stood up and he said, legal Haitian immigrants are eating the cats and dogs in Springfield. I mean, they were not quiet about what they were, who they were. J.D. Vance had so many unbelievably disrespectful things about women. It's no surprise, this whole, just the abortion ban conversation, which I have been trying to have for a very long time, just trying to really explain to people in the states with the most restrictive abortion bans, maternal and infant mortality rates rise. They go up. So if you are a pro-life person and you're voting for this, you are increasing the death count. You are increasing the loss of life with a vote for restrictive abortion bans. And it's only getting worse because doctors can't operate in this kind of environment. Like residents are not going to the states with these restrictive abortion bans. So now women who desperately want babies cannot get good prenatal care, cannot get good postnatal care, are not as safe as they should be during childbirth because there are not enough doctors and nurses and residents there to take care of them. And sometimes the medication you need, if you start hemorrhaging after childbirth, that medication, they can't even have that on the tray anymore. Somebody's got to run down the hall and unlock it. Like there's so many things that are happening that are so painful. I barely know what to say. Sometimes I'm so beside myself. But what started to trouble me is, where is the 900-page document that talks about what we do want? Where is that? Where's Project 2029? Where is a vision for okay, instead of focusing so much on all these things that are devastating and heartbreaking, where is the vision for what we want to do and how things could be and how we would enact it? Where is that? Because this does not happen in a country overnight, what we are seeing. I've always been a history buff. I love that stuff. I love the Constitution. I took, constitutional law in high school and in college. I love it. And so I can geek out on things. What we're seeing, where you have an administration come in and start to erode the foundation of a government, the principles, whether we're talking about democracy or any kind of government, when you see someone come in and start taking over in this way, it does not happen overnight. It happens when you have too many people in a country who are not being served, who are not being heard, who don't feel represented. That's when this kind of thing happens. that's when you get this kind of authoritarian takeover, because people get desperate and they get angry, and they want it to change. And so they go for the thing that looks like it has the best hope of change, even if it is the worst possible change, And we need an overhaul here. There are too many people in this country who are not being heard and not being cared for. There are too many people outside the safety net. And where's that? Where's the document? Where are the people right now? Because listen, nobody's an expert on everything. Even in their awful document, right? They had a lot of different contributors, a lot of different authors. Where is that? We need that. We need that a lot. We need like a think tank of people, like empathetic, creative, brilliant people working. We're late. I mean, we should already have it, but like we need that. We have those people. We have amazing people out there. When I say we, I'm talking about people who are in despair. That's the we I'm talking about right now. Okay, I'm not even attaching it to a party. I'm saying people who are looking at what is happening here and feeling despair about it. You don't have to put a party on that or a color, just people who are looking around and saying, this is not it. This is not what I want. This is not the world that I want for my children or yours or theirs even, I want all of us to have something so much better than this. We need people from, in that mindset to be working right now on infrastructure, like on healthcare, on education, on agriculture, on the environment, on women and girls and every marginalized community. How are we going to protect people so this never happens again? That's what we need right now. We need people to be working on that, because it's like you can't just fight against something. That's never going to motivate and excite people, especially the people that have just given up, that have just said, this sucks, this two-party thing sucks, everything sucks. They're out. They're just like, I'm just going to focus on my life and trying to keep my family safe, and that's it. You're never going to get them if it's just about this guy and the plane and the this, and this week he said that, and then he did this, and it's horrible. Yeah, it is. You're correct, but that's not going to motivate anybody. You got to give people a vision of I know there are people well, what are we going to do? Is it not too late? He's talking about another term. I know he is. Of course he is. They don't care about the Constitution. So of course he's talking about that. What I know is that if we cannot articulate what the vision is for how things could be, we're not going to get people up and involved and engaged. And that's what we need. We need people who have given up to get hopeful again and to see a possibility for something a lot better than what we've had and what we have, certainly. I don't think it's too late. I think if we could get, all of those people who did not show up to vote and all of the people who did show up to vote and did not vote for the people that are currently in power, and the people who maybe voted for this and are like, I did not mean to vote for this. If we could get those people excited about, okay, wait a second, maybe we need to really rethink everything. Maybe we need to rethink the whole picture here. And I know that's scary. The minute you start talking about even having a third party, whatever, people free, well, that those people can never win. We are at such a crisis point in this country. I think all bets are off. And what we actually need is something organized, inspiring, cohesive, and possible, right? And there are people I don't know. I'll give you a couple things for me. And this is not, I'm just, you can do this to yourself where you're like, well, who am I? Who am I to like come up with this stuff? Who are any of us? We are we the people. That's who we are. It's us. That's who we are. We are the we in we the people. That's who the government is supposed to be working for. So that's who you are. So you have every right to be in that conversation of what do I want? What do I want? Like, if I could have whatever I wanted, what would things look like here? And for me, I can tell you, our healthcare system is so broken for a first world country. Our healthcare system is more broken than any other country's. I mean, we are at like the lowest when it comes to being a developed country. Our healthcare system is the worst. And I mean, even in the countries where they have universal healthcare, but it isn't maybe the best, it's better than ours. And that's the truth, and people freak out. They're like, I have good insurance through my employer. Okay. So let's have a conversation, again, because we keep trying to get universal healthcare passed here and people freak out. Well, maybe it's time to stop freaking out, because at this point in time, I have insurance through the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and, I have good insurance through that plan, and I still have medical bills. I still have to wait now months to see a specialist if I need one. I had a mild skin cancer on my leg a couple of years ago, and I had to have it removed. I had Mohs surgery. I have to watch that stuff like a hawk. I got to go in and just have things burned off. I'm a freckly person. And so, it's just the liquid nitrogen, right? They just like zap these things, but you have to stay on top of it. Well, I found one like 2 weeks ago, and I did what you're supposed to do. I got got in the app, and I messaged my doctor. I'm like, hey, I've got one of those things. And they're like, okay, no problem. You've got your referral, call the dermatologist. July is the next time they can see me. That's not even bad. That's not even bad. But it's like, you wait months. I have been trying to get one of my kids a physical for 6 months. It's like, things are not good here. You do end up like, I have dense breast tissue. I like to talk about this stuff because we need to take the whatever uncomfortable, I get mammograms. I have breast cancer running in my mom's side of the family. My maternal grandmother died of breast cancer. I do not have the gene. I got tested. But I do have dense breast tissue. And so I need a mammogram and an ultrasound. You need both if you have dense breast tissue. Well, good luck getting that covered. I have to pay for that out of pocket. They'll only cover it every couple of years, and they'll only cover some of it every couple of years. It's like there's a lot of stuff here that is not working well. So let's overhaul that. Let's have that conversation. Let's have a conversation about education, because I think in a country that's a success, everyone should have the access to a good education, public education, all the way through college, community college, all the way through, right? All the way through. Affordable childcare. You want people to have more babies? I can help. I know what people need. If that's what you really want to do. It is not a $5,000 bonus. Give me a break. $5,000. Let me help you. Okay. I'm not even going to say it. It's just, that's like a joke is what that is. And I do not want to meddle. Like, how about give me affordable childcare, universal health care, paid time off, paid sick leave, free school lunches for people who need them. Like, make life possible for people. Let's raise, how about a livable wage for people? How about raising the minimum wage? How about housing? Let's talk about housing. Let's get into that conversation. all of us who grew up who are my age, right? Like Gen X, we were told like you work, you work, you work, you work, and then eventually you'll be able to, you go to a good school, you do all these things, you do it right, and you'll be able to go to a, eventually buy yourself a house, and then you'll be able to retire one day. Not anymore. You might have done all those things. Good luck. I have so many friends who are just like every month worrying, am I going to be okay? Can I take care of my kids? Are the kids going to be okay? Can I pay for college for my kids? Now that I finally managed to finish paying for my student loans, my own loans, can I now pay for my kids' school? Like, can I, am I going to be able to, am I ever going to be able to retire? I doubt it. Like, that's the conversation people my age are having. Nobody's talking about retiring that I know. If you're talking about retiring, hey, congratulations. Like something went really well for you. You picked the right career path or, whatever it is. You're like, you got yourself into a good situation, but it is not the norm. We just need to be having a major conversation about so many different things. The pay gap, women, like we're done. Like that needs to go away. That needs to be over and done with now. The equal rights amendment, we just need to be codify Roe. Like just get that in. Abortion rights and reproductive rights in. We're done. That's never on the block again. We're just done with that. We're not voting on it every 4 years because you're talking about women having bodily autonomy. Just enough with this conversation, whatever it is we need to do to be keeping people safe is what we need to do. And I don't know, like, that's what I'm saying. I'm not an expert on all of these, but we need to be having these conversations so that, the parents of Black children do not need to be having the talk with their 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 25-year-old Black sons. How about could we be done with that? I mean, I don't know. I just know that things could be a lot better than they are, like a lot better. And I think there are people who are hungry for this conversation. Nobody should be sleeping on the street, not in a country that's a success. Sane gun control legislation. Like, are we really, really going to just allow our children to be shot down at school, like week after week and not do anything about it? And years go by because that's what we've been doing. It's like we need to we need to have these conversations now and come up with a plan that is so much better than what we have had and what we are currently having. We need to talk to farmers because I'm like, I grew up in New York City, okay? I don't know what farmers need, but they know what they need and they don't feel like they've been served, we're not going to know unless we get the conversation flowing. What do you need to feel represented in this country? What is it that you need? And let's, can we be done with the electoral college? Let's have a conversation about voting rights and gerrymandering. Let's be done with that. Like, let's have these conversations and figure it out now and get people excited and on board. Otherwise, that's the only hope we have. Because the longer this goes on, what we have going on right now, the harder it's going to be to get these people out. The more the grift goes on and the people around this man and all of his associates are benefiting, the harder it's going to be to get them out. I, at this moment in time, have no faith because somebody asked me that. Who was in the comments in the essay. Don't you think it's like too late? Do you think we're even going to have like a free and fair election in 2028? No, not the way things are going. I don't. 2026, the midterms, 2029. Like, do you think in 2020, like, I was like, no, of course I don't. But I know that if we don't get something together with a cohesive plan. And, we're definitely not getting them out. The only hope we have is using our brains and using our words and like using our passion and our vision and putting something together and getting people excited. That's how we change everything, always, in life and in history. The only way things change is by having conversations, starting to do like starting to ask these questions and have these conversations and write things down and bat ideas around and brainstorm and figure out what people need. And obviously it's like you don't know what you don't know. So you get other people in the mix and you ask them and then you try to get things going. But if we do nothing, we're definitely dead in the water. So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at right now. And I'll tell you that it feels a lot better to start thinking about what do we want and what do we want to fight for, instead of being in a like reactionary sort of like, oh, this next thing now, look at this that I don't want my focus going on that mess. I don't want to take my focus totally off of that mess, because there are things that are terrifying that you need to try to resist in every way possible. But I don't want the majority of my energy going toward what they are doing. I want it going toward, what are we doing? What do we want? How do we organize? What is our vision? And how would we go about enacting it? How about like, I don't know, investing in like a speed rail network in this country so we could see our loved ones more. Like let's talk about infrastructure and make sure that everyone has access to it. And clean water, clean air, good education. Like, I don't know. There's just like, there's a huge conversation we could be having. And I don't understand why we aren't having more, but there are people, I'm not saying there aren't, there are some great people that are like, popping up and trying to have these conversations, and I love them. We need them to get together and start writing things down and working together, some kind of like, cohesive coalition, leadership. And I mean, something new here. And I know that, I feel like I am not alone in my desire for that. I think since January, we've all kind of been like, somebody needs to step up here, and like help, tell us how to fight this or what to do. Or no one's quite doing that. A few people are Latin, God bless them, and I linked a lot of things in the essay, people that I think are doing really great work, people that I appreciate, quite a lot. I want to know who you like, you know what I mean? And I think those people, like, let's try to get them, let's help. Let's do what we can do to help and to get something going here, like as soon as possible, and to get people excited again. Because this Westworld dystopian, we're going to Mars with, AI robots, and we're going to have tons of white babies. Ew. What? I don't like, please, this is not it, no thanks. I'd like to opt out of your weird worldview where it's like Gilead on Earth and whatever you're trying to do on Mars. No thanks. Take your billionaire boys club, whatever, weird gamer. This is a bunch of strange bedfellows there. It truly is. Bunch of terrifying, strange bedfellows all together running the show, and people are blinded. I don't know what is going on, but they're not going to be for long. These tariffs are about to hit, and everybody's groceries are going to go up, and anyway, we need to band together here and come up with something new. And, it was interesting in the essay, by the way, people started to like get really excited and throw ideas out, like more of a representational government, like proportional representation, like more like a parliament maybe, or like people just batting ideas around. And that's the idea. You don't have to like everything and you don't have to reject everything. You just like listen, like, oh, that's really cool. Let's talk about that. Like just working together and figuring it out. That's what I think we need right now. So that's what I was writing about. That's what's on my mind. I hope it was helpful for you. And I really am so interested in, other thoughts and ideas right now, because I don't think it's going to help any of us to be, just in this constant state of despair or dismay or outrage, even though those are all perfectly normal feelings. I was writing about like being at Trader Joe's and walking by the bagged lettuce. Don't buy bagged lettuce anymore. If you did, like the triple washed organic bagged lettuce, they're not checking that stuff for E. coli. They're not checking for salmonella anymore. They're not testing milk. Like just really, watch yourself. If you're going to buy lettuce, like it would be great if you could grow your own lettuce. That's where we are. But I was talking about Casey Means, the nominee for Surgeon General, and like my brain. And RFK Jr. taking his grandkids for a swim in like Rock Creek in Washington, D.C. And there's a longstanding ban, like not to swim or wade there for people and pets because there's so much bacteria, because sewage ends up there. And this man is like immersed in the water and the kids are there in bare feet. And I'm thinking like, what is happening? And then I'm at Trader Joe's, like walking by the bagged lettuce, and I was like laughing to myself because I'm like, we've got like RFK swimming in shit. He's like taking his grandkids and swimming in shit. And I'm like worrying about E. coli in the bagged lettuce. But anyway, so, it's mind bending, and you feel like you're going to like lose it sometimes, but you got to try to keep your wits about you. That's what I think. Stay as centered as you can, show up for your neighbors, show up for your friends, show up for yourself, know when you need help. Like don't try to figure out who your friends are that you can text like, hey, I'm having a rough one today. Like, just take care of yourself, but also like maybe let's get in this conversation together. I think it would be great and make us all feel better. And who knows, maybe it'll pick up enough steam and enough speed that we'll get the right people in that conversation. You never know. That's how it starts. So I hope this was helpful. And until next time, I'm sending you a lot of love.